Welcome to meditation today. And we're continuing talking about the Buddhist tradition and looking at what does a bodhisattva, a seeker on the Buddhist path, what path do they tread? What practices do they do? And so we talked about it the week before last, just talking about the different things that a step-by-step process. And you're looking at sitting meditation, which we talked about last week. And then this week, we're going to talk about Tonglen. It's Tonglen, Tonglen. And the literal translation of Tonglen is sending and taking. So that's the literal translation. So what does that mean? And I think it's interesting that it starts with, it's not taking and sending, it's sending and taking. And it's this exchange. And at its deepest meaning, it's, the Buddhists would consider it's the changing, the exchanging of yourself for another. A profound way of putting yourself in somebody else's position. And how do we start with this beautiful practice? It's the idea that we take in the pain and suffering of ourselves and others, instead of doing our very best to avoid it. When we find ourselves in painful and difficult situations, we tense up and we do everything within our power to block that pain from reaching us. Even from the point of view that if you have a physical problem, so many people have been sick. Even when we're physically unwell, the pain of being physically sick, instead of relaxing into that pain, we stiffen our bodies and try to think that if we tense up, we can stop it happening, which isn't true. And instead of relaxing and being able to release that pain, we hold ourselves stiff and try to ward it off. And that's what we do mentally, we do it emotionally, is that we put up this barrier. And so this practice really is about taking that pain and suffering and sitting with it, allowing it, taking it into your being instead of trying to keep it out. And that suffering is our own suffering, the challenges that we have. And it's also the suffering of others. And so really, in Buddhism, they don't make that huge distinction between our suffering and other suffering, because as we learn to work with it, something magnificent happens. So how do we set out on this path? And there are many ways to approach it, but the essence of this practice is the same, whatever way you come at it. And the idea is that we want to breathe in the things that we normally try to avoid. If you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling anxious and disturbed and upset about something, breathe that in. And then breathe out. And you want to breathe out with the sincere wish that yourself and others can be free of suffering. What a profound idea. So instead of avoiding our pain, we breathe, we befriend it, we breathe it in. And as you exhale, you want to have this sense that there can be freedom from suffering for all of us. It's a very beautiful practice to do. And how are we going to do that? And so in Buddhism, they say one of the best ways to do that is to let go of the storyline. Let go of the tale we tell that goes with pain and suffering. Let go of that and deal only with the feeling. What an amazing thing to even contemplate. Very often when we're upset about something, our story is, well, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then she said that, and he said that, and they did this to me. And there's a story that goes with our pain and suffering. And in the Buddhist tradition, they say, let that go. That's one of the ways that retelling of that story to yourself in so many different ways is one of the ways that we perpetuate that. And we do it in a way to avoid feeling the feelings of that situation. So if somebody said something unkind about you, and then they said it to somebody else, and the other person agreed, and now all of a sudden you're mad at one person, now you're mad at two people, and then it's not fair because other people are going to not like you because of something somebody said. Whoa. The truth of it is your feelings are hurt. So instead of worrying about all that's happening out there, turn to what's happening in here and breathe in that feeling. Sit with it of whatever's going on for you. So this idea of dropping the storyline is the sort of thing that yogis look at, Buddhists look at, and we do it maybe once or twice and we let go of the storyline, and then the next time something happens, we're back in knee deep in the storyline before we realize that we know a way out. So let go of the storyline that goes along with the pain and discomfort that we're in. Feel the underlying feeling and open your mind and heart completely to whatever arises. And this can take a moment. Sometimes, especially with others, we have a moment of peace and insight as we breathe in, and that feeling is changed in an instant. Sometimes it takes weeks of practice or months or years, maybe even lifetimes. But the Bodhisattva is a warrior who goes again and again and again to face whatever stands between you and this relief of suffering for yourself and for others. So let's look at what are we going to do. In this practice, when we've breathed in, we've opened our mind and hearts to whatever's coming up, and as you breathe out, as you exhale, send out relief from suffering, relief from pain. And with that exhalation and that relief is the intention that there is happiness for all. So if you can just imagine when you're bothered about something that's happening in your life, the way somebody's treating you, the idea that you can breathe that in, feel that feeling, allow it to be, allow whatever wants to come up. And as you exhale, happiness for all, relief from this suffering. It's a wonderful practice to do. And Pema Chodron, who is such a beautiful writer in the Buddhist tradition, says, being willing to stay even for a moment with the uncomfortable, with uncomfortable energy, we learn not to fear it. We're so afraid to feel how painful something feels. We find it painful to deal with little things, let alone the tragedies of life, the big things, the loss of loved ones, changes in circumstances that can be so painful. We struggle with that. So this willingness to be uncomfortable, if you can do it, if you dare, if you have that warrior spirit in you, leads you to begin to lose fear. You learn not to fear being uncomfortable. And when you don't fear it, you don't push it away. You're not protecting yourself all the time from that. So when it happens, we stop fearing the uncomfortable. So if you see someone else in distress, you're no longer reluctant to breathe in that person's suffering and exhale relief. And in fact, very often, once you learn to do it for yourself, even in little ways, it becomes so much easier. It becomes an automatic response. Because say, for example, we were talking about if you're in physical pain, maybe your body, sometimes you might just have a stomach ache. Instead of relaxing into it, we tense up to try to push it away. Instead of just allowing that pain and allowing whatever thoughts and feelings rise up. And you begin to let go and you get some relief. And so when you see somebody else who's in physical pain, you have an instant memory of what that's like. And as you breathe that in for them, you also breathe out relief for them. It's such a beautiful practice to do. So we lose that reluctance to feel somebody else's pain when we have the courage to face our own. Because, I had an experience just this week. I hadn't been feeling very well myself. And so I was doing this practice of not being afraid of that, of breathing that in and breathing out relief. And later that day, I was just driving in the car in Manchester. And I was driving along and I saw a man walking towards me. And he looked like he was probably a drug addict. But I saw in his face that same fear of pain that I'd experienced myself, of wanting to push that away and not deal with it. And so instead of seeing somebody who was on the margins of society, what I saw was somebody in exactly the same position as me. And what that does is that it opens your heart to this bodhicitta, this tenderness of the true heart, of the awakened heart. And so what I saw was our sameness. We were in the same position, afraid to look at how we felt. So compassion's easy in that situation. So who would have thought that having the courage to look at your own pain is what opens the door to having compassion for others? But it does. So what we're going to do now is to spend a little time doing this practice. And this is just one way to do it. We've talked about it. This is the basics of the practice. The essence of it is breathing in what's unwanted and that you're trying to avoid, anything uncomfortable. Breathe that in and breathe out relief and happiness for all. So that's the practice. But we're going to do it in a little bit more detail, a more step-by-step approach. So getting comfortable, sitting comfortably in your chair with your spine straight, closing your eyes and taking a couple of nice deep breaths. And there are 4 steps to this. And the first one is be aware after you breathe in and out. Be aware of a brief moment of stillness, of unconditional bodhicitta, the unconditional awakened heart, the emptiness and openness. And you may feel that this awareness is big enough to accommodate everything, that there is no place for anything to get stuck. And in this beautiful stillness, relax, stop struggling, and let emotions move through you without solidifying, without expanding. These emotions aren't growing, they're just moving through you. And trust this living quality of basic energy, that if you can just sit in stillness and trust, You may notice that you block that. If you notice that, feel yourself soften and relax. Be open, be without judgment or interpretation. And yogis would say, if you experience this even for a moment, you begin to know it's there and you can choose to go back to the stillness. And the second part is visualize and work with the raw energy of these two opposites. That feeling of claustrophobia, of things closing in, and the feeling of expansion, of spaciousness. And sometimes these qualities can feel oppressive, either one. They may feel heavy or almost like a smog. In this instance, we want to breathe through every pore in your being, breathing in that heaviness, that smogginess. And then as you exhale, you can exhale one of three things: brilliant moonlight, sun on the water, or the colors of the rainbow. Just pick one and stick to it. And just feel that, breathing in the heaviness and breathing out moonlight, sun on the water, or colors of the rainbow. Just doing that for a couple of minutes. You'll notice this breathing with the whole of your body sinks itself to your breath. And feel that you're breathing in and out evenly, the same length of time. And even if you tend to prefer breathing in or out, keep them the same length. Moving to the third part, which is the essence of the practice. Breathing in whatever is unwanted or uncomfortable. And breathe out a sense of relief. And do this initially for yourself. And now do this for someone else. Choose a specific person and do the same thing. Breathing in that person's pain and breathing out relief. And the fourth part of this practice is to extend our compassion further for all people who are experiencing this feeling. Sense that relief, that compassion, flooding the whole of your being, your intuition, your mind and emotions, your breath, and your physical body as you tense and relax your arms and legs, and just moving your torso from side to side, making smaller and smaller arcs until you're sitting up straight, relaxing your chin to your chest, and either moving your head from side to side, or if you have no neck problems, all the way around in one direction, And then in the opposite direction. And then gently opening your eyes. And in the Buddhist tradition, they would say that traditionally, you do this practice for people who spontaneously come to your mind and heart and spark your compassion. And sometimes you may have even found while you're doing this practice that happened, that people popped into your mind and it was easy to have compassion, to breathe in their pain and breathe out relief. You may have found it more difficult for yourself because we took that couple of minutes at the beginning to center, to be aware of that brief moment of silence. And once you're centered, very often we don't have those feelings. So very often the time to work on our own, having compassion for ourselves, is when we are feeling uncomfortable, and take the time to sit and feel that uncomfortableness and breathe it in and be open to whatever the mind and heart has to offer, and exhaling relief. This is such a beautiful practice. It allows us to grow deeper and deeper ourselves. It opens our minds and hearts to compassion for others, that grows into this experience of your connectedness with everyone. So I hope you enjoy and have a chance to practice this. Tonglen, sending and taking. Namaste.